This is day 258 of heroic resistance of Ukraine. This is Ukraine Media Center, Natalia Staroprava. So in the Lviv region, we have formulations for special purpose pyrotechnic devices developed, as well as hydrogel wound dressings. We have together with us Vadym Tabakera, Deputy Director of the Department for Economic Policy of Lviv Oblast Military Administration. Could you please tell us more about this project? I want to say thank you to the media community for the great attention for this program, for the development of innovations and new technologies, and it is great that in these difficult times the community, the public are interested in such programs. To begin with, I would like to present the very program itself. This program of innovative development is a pilot program, and as of today, it's been implemented for the second time in the Lviv region. In 2021, it was developed together with our local deputies, with experts and business representatives. It is not a huge program, 5 million hryvnias. It is 1% of the budget which is allocated for scientific developments. It is half of a billion hryvnias, and we understand that quite a long period of time when we talk about scientific projects in the Lviv region, they were not close. Well, they were close to applied sciences. Then we also have some expenses as far as some current activities were concerned, but we didn't really have a lot of money allocated for scientific developments and applied sciences. That is why, together with the researchers and businesses, we started working on implementation of innovative projects. There was an agenda to have to gather together businesses, authorities, and scientists when we talk about innovative products and their implementation. We had 8 projects last year, and this year we had 9 projects. 2 of these projects, we have the representatives of Lviv Polytechnic University. We have representatives of the university here, and actually they exceeded our expectations, these projects, because when we invest into innovations, it is always a risky deal, because you don't really know whether it will be a success or you will not succeed, because it is about research. It is always a process, and this year this process was very close to the conditions that we are living in, war times, and that is exactly why when we had the competition, we talked about high-tech devices for military purposes and also for some other purposes, as well as cybersecurity. So if we focus on 2 of these areas, and I think that colleagues can tell you more about these projects. If you have some other questions, I will answer them. So I would like to give the floor to Zenovii, head of the Department of Chemistry and Technology of Inorganic Substances of the Institute of Chemistry and Chemical Technologies of Lviv Polytechnic National University. Glory to Ukraine. Could you tell us about the project? Well, I represent the Department of Chemistry and Technology of Inorganic Substances, and for the past years we've been working on formulations for special purpose pyrotechnic devices. Most of them have already been developed, and we already have large-scale supplies to armed forces of Ukraine, to security service of Ukraine and other forces. We have some funding coming from the Lviv military administration because it is part of the project which was mentioned by Vadym. We are developing some special purpose devices. We are talking about 2 groups. Well, the first group, pyrotechnic devices, some grenades, and also we have another group of grenades. Also, this first group, it is used to understand what is the location from which the people have to be evacuated. I'm talking about some reconnaissance forces or wounded, for example. and they can actually show you where some transport vehicles can go. So the purpose is to use this smoke, which has a specific color, and they can show you this location. Well, there are different formulations actually, but for us it was important to develop a formulation using raw materials which can be used here on a local level, and it's very important that the technology is flexible and that we can have actually different colors of this smoke which is used with these grenades, and it's important that we do it without the use of some other devices. So we had several samples. We tried them out. There were some trials. We provided information to our partners from the Lviv administration. We showed the results in lab conditions, and I think that we managed to achieve 100% success. Then we also have pyrotechnic devices which can be used in the situation when there is a fire. And of course, we understand that it's very important to have such devices due to the situation, because we have local fires, and it happens inside the buildings, in vehicles, and they can be used to extinguish fires in closed localities. This is not something that you can use outside, but when you talk about vehicles, about buildings, they prove to be very efficient. What are the benefits of them as compared to traditional means of extinguishing fire? When you talk about the battlefield or the front line, it's not that you can really use extinguishers often, and very often it's difficult to approach the various source of this fire, and that is why it's easier to do it using a so-called regular grenade, which can be thrown within the distance of several meters into the very fire itself, into this area. So you do it remotely, and also you can do it in the vehicle, and if you see that the temperature is rising, then it works by default, and it helps to extinguish the fire. Then we already had some lab trials, and we will also have another phase of trials in natural conditions. It's very important that we take into consideration safety measures when talking about these devices. I also want to invite Olena Lukachuk from the Lviv Polytechnic University, and we know also about hydrogel wound dressing, so I will invite Olena, who is a scientific researcher, to tell us more. It's very important that in these difficult times we have this triangle of authorities, academia, and businesses. I want to say thank you to the Lviv military administration for paying attention to us, for understanding that it's very important to do this work, and given the circumstances, it's important to have support from our side, and it is a great advantage. And this is support of our developments future-wise, because this year we received support for endowments for 7 projects at our university, which is a great thing for us. Of course, they are in different stages of development, but they are very interesting because they can be used for different purposes. And I think that when it's very important to support national local projects. One of these projects is production of hydrogel wound dressings, which was realized by the Institute of Lviv Polytechnic National University. The group has been working for quite a long period of time, because innovation, this is something which doesn't really happen overnight, and it requires a lot of resources. Also, it requires funding, because this is something that needs resources. We need some agents, we need some equipment, and this is the possibility for us, and it's very important that we can do it jointly. When you talk about these hydrogel dressings, the management of our university, our rector, our vice rector on scientific work and research. We also have some endowments from the state because there was a we were really happy to be supported. Our group who worked on this project. Why is it needed and why do we need such hydrogel wound dressings and why they are better as compared to the US or European hydrogel wound dressing? I think this is quite an important question because we receive some humanitarian aid, and why does it make sense to invest into a national local product? First of all, we use only natural raw materials. It doesn't cause irritations or allergic reactions because I am prone to allergies and I've been suffering from it for 10 years and there was no irritation. This is my personal experience. It's not just me, being promoting the product, and also it is degradable because we know that the green economy is another trend which is of importance. So it's important for us to preserve the environment. We know what the situation is around the globe. That is why it's very important if you use proper materials for such dressings. So the third point being, what is the use of this dressing? It is a chlorhexidine dressing. This is something which can be used on wounds and it helps them to heal. We also have wound dressings without anything, regular ones, and they can be used in case of burns. If there is a burn, then you can place it on the area with the burn, and it helps to reduce pain, and at the same time it helps to make sure that some other organisms do not enter this area, and it helps with healing in the future. Also, these dressings could be used with those people who have limited mobility and they are staying in hospitals for a long period of time, and we know that every 2 hours it's important that you turn the person, that they are not immobile all the time, and sometimes there are no people to do that. Such patients do not have 24/7 care, and it's very important for those people actually to use some other options, and also, especially when we talk about bad sores, we know how important it is. There was a mother of one of men who had an injury. It was very difficult actually for this wound to heal. For some 3 or 4 times they used these chlorhexidine wound dressings. It was possible for them to move abroad for rehabilitation. It was possible for them actually to improve the situation, and this man received prosthesis, limb prosthesis. There was some mechanic injury. Also, it's important that these dressings can be used further because it is a teamwork. There are many people working on these projects. We have our students, we have very many volunteers, and our students, they also act as volunteers because there are very many things which have to be done within this project. Also, as far as equipment is concerned and its capacity, it would be great for us to also attract investors which could spend more time on this, because our researchers, they're also teachers. They teach at university, they work with students, and it's important for them to keep working on some other devices with the use of hydrogel. We have very many projects which are to be implemented in the future. Yes, we will also talk about this more. So do you already have some batches of these wound dressings? Because we can see some of the samples. Well, our project was about provision of these hydrogel wound dressings to local healthcare facilities, because we don't really know about the needs. Supposedly, if there is a fire or maybe there is some other situation, it's important for our health workers to use these dressings. Also, paramedics can use these dressings. Also, paramedics have them in their backpacks, in their kits. Before that, we just disseminated, actually distributed these dressings, but now it takes 5-7 days for us to make more of these dressings to provide them to healthcare facilities. So the demand is much greater than a supply, actually. So we distributed some 50,000 dressings. Well, on there were different terms. Well, volunteers help with that. We provided it to different groups of people, and we know that it's working. And that is why it's important for us for this product, which was developed here in the Lviv region, to be distributed across the country. And it is about us supporting safety of our Ukrainians, mitigating painful feelings. This is our key objective. And also, I hope that in the future, the entire team will be further supported by the regional administration, actually, well, the Department for Economic Policy of the Oblast Military Administration, Vadym, Stepan, and Karina. They supported us, and it's important that we continue with this project because it is something which has already been implemented, and because we have this lab production line, and it's very important to have a large-scale production which would also cater for the needs in Ukraine and abroad. For how much time can you wear this dressing, and how often do you change it? It depends on the wound. Well, some 3-4 days. This is the recommendation. But if you have some ball of fluid, or if you see the swelling, then it is 1-2 days. Well, colleagues, if you have some questions to our speakers, then please you can ask these questions, but introduce yourself. Parshas Західний, Елizaveta. Returning to pyrotechnic devices, could you tell more about these grenades which can be used in case of a fire? Well, without talking about some details of formulations, but is this something which is already being used on the front line, and what are your production capacities? Well, we work on formulations of these grenades. First of all, it can be used to extinguish the fire or to localize the area's location, to reduce the heat which results from burning processes. And we know that there are some substances with endothermic effect. We know that we have high dispersive elements, and they can absorb a lot of heat under certain conditions. In that case, it really helps with extinguishing fire. Also, when we talk about oxygen, it helps with this. When we talk about some services which are already burning, this is another mechanism of these grenades. There are also two mechanisms here. It works both ways. Well, formulations, this is a different story. We've been developing such devices. They are on trial in small quantities because it is related to the trial conditions. We are verifying these formulations. We also have another type of grenades, those small smoke grenades, which I already mentioned. It is not large-scale production, but our projects are really interested. Well, what about your production capacity? Well, we cannot really produce it because these are pyrotechnic devices. Well, unlike dressings, which can be made in our laboratories, we work only on formulations and technologies of production, and we give it to our partners. You also mentioned that this is not the only project, that you had some projects before. So what does the future hold for us? Well, as of today, we also have more interesting projects, and here we can talk about the development of UAVs and different automatic land platforms which help with mining of some territories, and also some automatic demining. devices. Cybersecurity is another interesting area where we can use artificial intelligence to identify, to reveal fake news, because this is something which part of your job, of course, as journalists. But here we talk about some automated principles which help us to identify fake news and to deal with that. Some projects are still on elaboration state because there were some problems with funding this year. But in the second part of the year, we managed to engage to attract some funding. But I think that we can talk more in the future about this. We had Vadym Tabakera with us, from Deputy Director of the Department for Economic Policy, Lviv Oblast Military Administration; Zenovii, Znak, Head of the Department of Chemistry and Technology of Inorganic Substances of the Institute of Chemistry and Chemical Technologies at Lviv Polytechnic National University; and Olena, Lukachuk, Scientific Researcher of Commercialization Group at the Lviv Polytechnic Research and Development Department. Thank you for this conversation, and we will see you shortly.